You wanted more Dungeons & Dragons combat house rules? Well, you got it. We're going to upgrade your entire campaign, move around the battlefield, and pull off multi-character combos. All of this will make your game more creative and your combats outside the box. Now roll it. Welcome to the Dungeon Coach. I'm the Dungeon Coach. I'm going to help lower that DC in your game, again, with some more combat rules. And I'm going to show you how I fix some of my own homebrew rules from the part 1 video. And on top of that, I usually tackle a feat that needs some fixing. So at the end of the video, I'm taking on the Sentinel feat. So if you want to take your Dungeons & Dragons game to the next level with some creative homebrews and outside the box ideas, start right now by clicking that subscribe button and join in so you don't miss out. I'm trying to help you guys out. So again, I have a pay what you want resource filled with not just these homebrew rules, but the ones from my previous video in a downloadable PDF. There'll be a link down in the description. You can go over to the DM's Guild and pick it up for free or throw me a few bucks for a thank you. I really hope it helps you out, so let's go. Number 1, campaign group perks. This is when you give out or unlock new rules in your game after certain level ups or story moments happen. I wanted to lead with this idea because this is something I've talked a lot about with you guys down in the comments. A lot of you have liked some of the homebrew rules I got, and I have a bunch now, and you didn't know how to implement them mid-campaign. Early on in a campaign, I want things to be harder on my players and make them feel like those measly level 1 players that they are. But over time, I want them to feel more heroic and give them access to more cool things. You can accomplish this on an individual basis with a bonus level up system I have that I've already done an entire video on, where every time a player levels up, they get a cool new perk. But for this, I'm not talking about just one player. I'm talking about the whole group, or even just a rule that you add to your entire table. This can be something really simple, like allowing your players to use a potion as a bonus action. When I first started DMing, I didn't have that rule in place, so for the first part of the game, they had to use a full action to use a potion. So then mid-campaign, when my players got to level 3, I wanted them to feel like more competent adventurers, so they unlocked this rule. They've gotten better at quick drawing those potions. Time out. Here are 2 great ways to implement house rules mid-campaign. One is to talk to your players about this beforehand. Maybe it's a cool idea that you want to try out for something coming up, or something you want to last the entire campaign. Or as a second option, just send your group the video link of mine where I talk about it and let me be the one to break the ice for them. Once they see that video, they might be excited too. And I'm not trying to plug myself here. This idea came from you guys of what's worked for y'all. Either way, implementing some of these rules mid-campaign can even spice up the game and give them some new interactions to look forward to. In fact, this idea leads me to the next rule, which is something I actually implemented mid-campaign as well. Number 2, held turns. Initiative order to me can feel a little too structured and rigid. So all this rule is after initiative's rolled for, you may hold your turn after a specific person, enemy, or ally. So the trigger would be who you go after instead of the current system having a ready in action. If you have a higher initiative, that means you're ready for battle and you could always wait for the right moment and lower it. Now there's 2 ways to handle this. You can either have that player that's lowered their own initiative permanently stay at that new lowered spot, or how I do it is once that round's over, their initiative resets back to what it was before. I've never had any issues running it like this, and if you're worried about a player having a really high initiative and then waiting to the end to finally go, and then when it resets, now it's back to them again, don't worry, it's fine. I also feel like this makes sense because that person was waiting for the right moment and then did a whole bunch of stuff all at once. And if you stop and look at the big picture, it doesn't affect action economy at all. But of course, you know your players, and if they start abusing this system, then take it away from them. I gave this to my players around level 5 because I saw them wanting to break apart some of their turn, and the whole ready to action system just feels clunky. So here's an example. You're the cleric of the group and you somehow got an initiative of 15 this round, but you want to wait for after the barbarian goes at initiative 4. So initiative 15 comes, and let's say you use 15 feet of movement to get a little closer in there and use a bonus action for something. Then you declare, I want to wait until after the barbarian goes for the rest of my turn. Everybody else goes, some bad guys go, other people go, the barbarian goes, and after he goes, now you can take the rest of your turn. You use the other 15 feet of your movement and then use your action. Now, if you think that's crazy and broken, then sure, by all means, lock them into having to hold their entire turn instead of being able to use parts of it. I like combat to feel alive and not so segmented. So when players want to think like this and come up with cool ideas and combos, go for it. This rule also fits very nicely with the third rule here. Number 3, tandem turns. This ties in with the previous rule and is something I gave my players at level 10. This lets players with matching initiatives go at literally the same time. They can move and take their turns together instead of having to choose who goes first, or do that dexterity score tiebreaker thing. They just team up together and go as one, which can lead some pretty cool combos. So how this might look with that same cleric and barbarian example is if the cleric held their initiative to be able to go together, they would literally use their movement, go together, and as soon as the cleric got within range, he could cast Guiding Bolt to give the barbarian advantage, and then he gets his strike. Or what if it's a fighter and barbarian? They both run in together, the fighter uses his first action to shove him prone, the barbarian attacks him, the fighter then attacks him, and then the barbarian grapples him. Hopefully you could see how cool some of this stuff could be. DM challenge. Anytime I give my players a buff, spell, or feature of some kind, I try and explain it through the story and something that happens actually in-game. So here's an example for this. When my players defeated one of the huge campaign arc bosses, they had some downtime in the capital city. I have a video linked down in the description that goes over a ton of different ways to use downtime at your table. So I had the general of that capital city teach the players how to work together as a team in tandem. I gave each player some cool combo moves that they could use together, but we could talk about that in a whole video. But from those tactical teachings, I gave them these tandem turns. Terrific. This rule combined with the previous rule allowed my players to hold their initiatives and go together and pull off some pretty sweet plays. Number 4, movement currency. This lets you spend certain chunks of movement to be able to do certain things. Sometimes players do things and you as the DM have to rule on what it would cost to do that thing. Action, bonus action, reaction, or movement. What I'm proposing here is that you have them spend some certain amount of movement speed to do that thing. This is already used in the game. Whenever you climb, it just costs double movement speed, no action or bonus action. And if you fall prone, you have to spend movement speed to stand back up. So I'm just expanding on this. Timeout bonus tip. Standing up for me at my table does not take half movement speed, it just costs 15 feet of movement. Because that monk with 50 movement speed should not have to spend 25 movement speed just because they have more. In fact, I think it should take them less since they're so quick and they could do that like ninja get up thing. So I have it just cost 15 feet of movement for anyone to stand up. And that thought is what led me to this. Right now I'm going to go through a list of certain interactions that some DMs might have players take an action for or a bonus action, but I think it's very appropriate here to have them spend their movement. But do what you want. Disclaimer here, a lot of these I would just have be a free action, but if they start doing it multiple times, then I might start implementing this cost of even 5 movement speed or 10. So on the screen, I'll have pop up about how much movement speed I think it might cost. Drawing or sheathing a sword, opening or closing a door, withdrawing a potion from your backpack instead of just on your hip, because it would take more time to fumble around through your backpack. Even myself as a DM used to only rule that as an action to get out of your backpack or just a bonus action to get off your hip. But with this, maybe it cost them 15 feet of movement to stop and get it out of their bag and then a bonus action to drink it. I don't know. Picking up or dropping something, taking something off a table, removing a ring from your finger, planting something into the ground, rifling through one of your pouches, throwing a switch or a lever, light a torch, extinguish a torch, put on a mask, take off a mask. Listen to a door or unlock a door. For your rogue character that's super good at picking locks, maybe it doesn't cost them an action or bonus action anymore to interact with it, and just costs them 10 feet of movement. Or this one's cool, hand off or throw an item to somebody else. Maybe it costs you movement speed to throw it and then movement speed to catch it. Again, I'm just trying to give DMs another creative tool and players some wiggle room. Timeout. Last video I have some of these rules of mine that I threw out there, and after collaborating with literally you guys, the dungeon crew, I've updated and polished off these rules from a lot of the feedback I heard from you guys. These updates will also be reflected in that Combat House Rules PDF that I updated since the second videos came out. And I will continue to up this in the future once I have even more of these videos. Because trust me, I got a ton of stuff on combat. We put a lot of work into these PDFs, and I really would appreciate the support. And if you do like these things, drop over on the DMs Guild and give us a good review. Because right now, my Homebrew non-combat house rules video has a 1-star rating from one 1-star review. So now we're gonna get into those rules, and we're gonna end with that big Sentinel feat fix. Number 5, advantage stacking. This one's simple, and I've made it even more simple. Props to the dungeon crew for having healthy and positive debates on this, because after hearing a lot of what y'all said, I've changed it to this. Rules as written, if you have advantage and gain another advantage, it just washes away and I guess cancels out or just doesn't count. So all this simple rule is if you have advantage and you gain another advantage, each additional advantage just becomes a +2 added on to the end of the roll. So you normally roll a d20, advantage gives you 2 d20s, and if you get another advantage, it'd be a +2, another one would be a +4, +6, and so on, you get it. This, in my opinion, is a mandatory homebrew. Because rules as written with it just washing away, not only does it make sense, but feels bad. But if even just a repeating +2 seems like too much for you guys, you can easily switch it down to just a +1. But DMs out there, please reward your players with creativity and let them take advantage of this advantage stacking rule. Number 6, new opportunity attack triggers. In the first video, I talked about opportunity attacks as more of thinking outside the box with them and not being so black and white. But now I want to throw in some extra stuff of what could actually trigger an opportunity attack besides just leaving melee. So here's the rule. Any action or interaction that leaves your character vulnerable and an opening of opportunity to be attacked, enemies around you can take an opportunity attack if they're within 5 feet. Because really, what is an opportunity attack but a window of opportunity to attack someone when their guard's down? So here's some of these new triggers, and while I'm saying these, open up your mind to how this actually might affect the game and how combat might be more dynamic. We talked about this in the last video, but it'd be very difficult to keep your guard up while standing up from prone. So I feel like that would trigger an opportunity attack. Or imagine you're toe-to-toe facing an enemy in battle, and they reach down to their pouch, grab a glass vial, uncork it, start to drink it, they drink it, and they finish right in front of you. I feel like that'd be a great window of opportunity to attack them. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. So many times players will just do stuff right in the face of an enemy, and it really wouldn't make sense that that enemy would just let them do it. Now, yes, I know this is more punishing to players, but keep in mind, this applies to enemies as well. But I feel like all of these would make your players think more and really be on their toes in combat like they should. So here's the list. Like we just said, standing up from prone, drinking a potion, loading a crossbow, opening a door, and especially picking a lock from a door. Anything that's a complex mechanism that requires extreme focus to have to do. Or I've had a hardcore wizard player of mine literally ask this rule to be put on him is have spells that require a semantic and material component to trigger an opportunity attack. And I totally get it. If a wizard has his book flipping through it and he starts casting a spell, his guard's down. And hey, he put that on himself, but it really added an extra layer to combat that he loved. Number 7 is the revised help action. Rules as written, when you take the help action, it just grants advantage to whoever you're helping. With my original homebrew in the last video, I would have you instead roll a d10. And if this was in combat for something that would deal damage, that 1d10 would be added to the attack roll and to the damage. My intent was to inspire my players to use this help action for these cool combo plays like I also was saying earlier. So I asked you guys for help down in the comments, and you'll have some great ideas. Because the problem is rolling a flat 1d10 doesn't really account for who is helping and how good they are at helping that thing. And in general, I don't let people take the help action towards something they aren't proficient in. So here's the new rule. For the help action now, you roll 1d6 plus your proficiency bonus and add it to your ally's roll. And if this is in combat, whatever the total of that roll was also is applied to that person's damage. Just make sure you add the extra RP flair of describing exactly how you're helping this person. Because this has led to some epic description and cool combos. Time out. I know a lot of people said this last time, but Dungeon Coach, what about bards? Doesn't this step on their toes? Wouldn't they feel less special? Now, okay, listen up here, because I truly feel like this thought process is hurtful towards homebrews and customizing your game. If you don't have a bard in your group, because come on, you know how rare they are, then don't worry about that. Don't shut off awesome mechanics that are already in the game just because there's a class that exists in the game that's not actually at your table. I know a lot of people like to have rules that are always the same no matter what groups you use, but I feel like you could be more fluid than this. So if there is a bard at your table, you could either nerf this system or go back to normal, or just buff the bard and give him something even cooler so he does feel special. Number 8, massive criticals. Rules as written, you double your dice whenever you crit. My solution was to max out those extra dice that you doubled instead of rolling them. But I hear you guys down in the comments, what about rogues and paladins? It's too strong. Or if some creature has a crazy bite attack with some extra poison damage, that would be a lot of dice that have been maxed instead of just rolled. So here's my simple modification to help smooth out that spike that some of these classes or monsters can have. So we're going to use a Paladin Smite for this. And the rule's the same as before. You still double the dice, but instead of maxing out all the extra dice, you only max out the dice that come from the weapon damage. So if your attack with a longsword is 1d10 plus 3, the Paladin smites to get that extra d8 added onto it. So now you crit and you double those dice. But to make sure your crit doesn't fall flat, instead of rolling that extra d10 that you got from your longsword, instead you just max it and it's a 10. And then you still roll all the other dice like you normally would. So even if you did roll all ones, that one dice that you maxed out is your crit insurance. The same thing would apply to a green dragon's bite attack. You would of course double all the dice, but those dice that came from the extra claw attack, those would be maxed. And again, all these rules I just listed off, you could totally add them mid-campaign, like I said in that first homebrew rule. I did myself with a lot of these, including the help action. In fact, I kept buffing the help action across the entire campaign to try and get them to freaking use it. But I think now it's in a good spot. And now we're into overtime. Before we get into that Sentinel feat fix, I teased this last week with the reveal of all these cool purple dragon icons we have for the channel now. But there's one more dragon. The Platinum Dragon is the top tier that I have over on Patreon. And these people donate $100 a month to help me be able to do what I do on this channel. I'm absolutely blown away that there's even 8 of them in the first place. And for people to believe what I'm doing here that much blows me away. So for those Platinum Dragons, I want to have a next level crazy dragon for them. So here is the Platinum Dragon. I can't thank you guys enough, so I wanted to try and do something to be able to say thank you. But like I said, there's no way we'd be here where we are now without all of the Dragon support from my patrons and YouTube members. So thank you all so much for coming together to support me on this, because every bit counts. And if it wasn't for the support that I got, I really do not think I could make consistent videos every week. I've used all the money that I've got and put it right back into this channel to help me be able to edit faster and do things so that I can have consistent content for y'all. Because I would still be editing these videos on my iPhone if it wasn't for them. So I've finally started to be able to save up for a computer now that'll be even more efficient and help with those live streams. And now for what you've all been waiting for, that Sentinel feet fix. I just really don't like it. My biggest problem with it is that it reduces speed to 0. And the fact that there's not a size restriction on this is absolutely nuts, that you can spend an opportunity attack as just a reaction on an ancient dragon and now it can't move. What? How? This also feels bad as a DM whenever it's used on me, and I feel awful when I use it on players, and just like it feels like a gotcha thing. And why I think it feels this way is you can wipe a creature's movement speed away with just a reaction. And no matter how fast they were or large they were, their speed gets reduced to 0. So even if they had 80 movement speed, 0. 30 movement speed, 0. Gargantuan creature, 0. And this feat's already really good because you can attack people that take the disengage action and still get an opportunity attack on them. And you even get opportunity attacks on enemies that hit allies that are next to you. So I'm saying this is already a useful feat already without having to have that 0 speed thing. And a DM tip here is movement across a battlefield is part of what makes fights feel so dynamic. Whenever I create encounters, I try and think of things to put in place to keep things moving around the battlefield. Because imagine how boring it would be to have a fight where there's one creature that never moves the whole time. And it just stays there in one spot. And it tries to move and it just stays there. And then now everybody's standing around it, fighting it. Do you maybe see now why, from that perspective, the Sentinel feat sabotages dynamic combat? And the last part of my rant here before I fix this thing is, what does this actually look like in use? How are you actually stopping the movement of all these creatures? Are you stabbing in the leg? Are you tripping it? Are you like taunting them to stay and fight you? I just can't see what it looks like to do to a dragon to make it not move. Okay, rant over. So I asked myself, what's the purpose of the Sentinel feat and why does somebody take it and how can I fix it without sabotaging that? This feat should let you be able to defend your allies and stop creatures from getting away from you. So here's my fix. This, along with those other feats I fixed, will also be in that free downloadable PDF. You have mastered the techniques to defeat creatures' attempts to escape you, gaining the following benefits. When you hit a creature no more than one size category larger than yourself with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed is reduced by 15 until the end of their next turn. See what I did there? I think it was rule number 4, but remember this 15 feet reduction? This just feels right here. And I didn't change the other 2 parts about creatures still provoking opportunity attacks from you, even if they take a disengage action, and creatures within 5 feet of you attacking a target other than you, you can still attack those too. So the biggest thing to this fix is so simple, is instead of wiping a movement speed down to 0, it just subtracts 15. And if you're a medium-sized creature, you can do this to a large-sized creature, but not any higher. And if an enemy with 30 feet of movement runs in for a hit and run to try and attack you, runs in 15 feet and tries to run away, and you hit them, they can't move. So you'd get the same effect. And if you think I hated the Sentinel feat, if you didn't notice, I also buffed it, and I changed it to have the effect last until the end of the creature's next turn. So if you get an opportunity attack again from some of those earlier rules that I listed off, you see how all this stuff is kind of connected in together? Once that creature's turn comes up, they'd be 15 feet slower. Do you want more of these homebrew rules? Do you want to fix dual wielding or fix grappling? What about a new resist and vulnerability system? If this video gets 600 likes in the next 4 days, I'll do another follow-up homebrew video on combat. I have a ton of video topics coming up that's been voted on by my patrons, but I also want to listen to the entire community. And if you guys tell me you want to see something, I'm going to give it to you. So if you want to level up your game and make it more creative with some next level homebrews, then start right now, hit that subscribe button, because next week I'm throwing my hat into the ring on how to fix counterspell. Ooh. Click right here if you want to see my most recent homebrew video on non-combat rules, and click right here if you missed the part 1 to this video. You can support the channel on Patreon right here, or clicking that join button down below right next to the subscribe button. And don't forget to join in on that double giveaway. I have links to both of them down below and a video explaining all the crazy prizes I'm doing. So until next time, stay creative and think outside that box.